The Bible Journey Archaeological, Geographic and Historical Confirmation of the Bible New Testament by Timothy Hartley and Dr. Martin Nicolai, Editor 1. Home of Virgin Mary, Grotto in Church of the Annunciation, Nazareth, Galilee, Israel. Nazareth was a small town in the 1st century made of descendants of returned exiles of the tribe of Judah. What is amazing is that Nazareth is within the boundaries of the tribe of Zebulun. 700 years earlier, the prophet Isaiah foretold that the great light would come to the land of Zebulun in Isaiah 9, verses 1-2. Isaiah and Zechariah both prophesied that the Messiah would be called the branch, which in Hebrew is Netzah, which is the root word for Nazareth. The Catholic Basilica of the Annunciation in Nazareth was built in 1969 upon the ruins of a 1st century dwelling in Nazareth, which is believed to be the home of the Virgin Mary. This home is now called the Grotto of the Annunciation and is believed to be the place where the angel Gabriel met her and announced to her that she was to be the mother of Jesus Christ. Connected to the grotto are stairs from a 4th century church which also venerated the site. Above the site are ruins of Byzantine churches which were destroyed, then rebuilt in Crusader times, then destroyed again. Early believers knew this as the place where Mary, the mother of Jesus, lived and grew up. Within the grotto, there is an altar with the following inscription: Vers verbum caro hic factum est, which means here the word was made flesh. 2. Spring of the Virgin, Saint Gabriel, Greek Orthodox Church, Nazareth, Galilee, Israel. Saint Mary's Spring is located inside the Greek Orthodox Church of Saint Gabriel, which was built in 1767 in Nazareth. In the 3rd century a church was initially built around the site of Mary's Spring, based on the belief that this was an important Christian site. Although the New Testament does not record the location of the Annunciation, the author of the Proto-Evangelium of James gives details about the Annunciation. And she took the pitcher and went forth to draw water, and behold, a voice said, verse Hail Mary, full of grace, you are blessed among women. According to this account, Mary was at the place to draw water, or a spring of water. This church was built in the Orthodox tradition where the angel Gabriel met Mary and told her she would be the mother of the Son of God. The Catholic tradition, however, maintains that the site of the Annunciation was the home of Mary. This natural spring in St. Gabriel's Church is the source of an ancient well around which the town of Nazareth was built. This is called the Fountain of the Virgin or the Well of Mary. 3. Mary's Well, near St. Gabriel, Greek Orthodox Church, Nazareth, Galilee, Israel. In 1824, William Ray Wilson described the well of the Virgin that gave water to the inhabitants of Nazareth. When he visited Nazareth, the population was about 1,500, most of whom were Christians. The house of Mary was there when he visited Nazareth, with the ruins of the Byzantine monastery of the Annunciation that Empress Helena had built in the 4th century still visible. Women in ancient Israel would come to the well in town once or twice a day. It is likely that Mary came to this well, which is really a trough where water from a spring above, in St. Gabriel's Orthodox Church, would flow down to this well and be collected. The Well of Mary structure was built in the 1800s. Then demolished in the 1960s and rebuilt, but is no longer functional as of the 1960s. 4. Tombstone of Quintus Aemilius Secundus confirming Caesar's census, Museo Archeologo Nazionale, Venice, Italy. In 1764 construction workers found an interesting tombstone while building the St. George Orthodox Church in Beirut, Lebanon. The tombstone belonged to Quintus Aemilius Secundus and is dated to 20 AD. It mentions how Secundus conducted the census by order of Publius Sulpicius Quirinius during the time of Caesar Augustus and found the city of Apamea to have 117,000 citizens. This confirms the account of Luke 2 verses 1-3 that Caesar Augustus ordered a census when Quirinius was governor of Syria. The tombstone is now located at the Museo Archeologico Nazionale in Venice, Italy. 5. Bethlehem star. The conjunction of Venus, Jupiter, Regulus in constellation Leo. In 2007, Dr. Frederick Larson used Starry Night software based on Kepler's laws of planetary motion, and proposed the theory that the Star of Bethlehem as recorded in Matthew 2 verses 1-10 was in fact the conjunction of the planets Venus and Jupiter with the star Regulus in the constellation of Leo. The conjunction of the three heavenly bodies occurred in June 2 BC. The Bible also says that the star stood over where the young child was. This could be explained by the fact that Jupiter can seem to stop, as from the perspective of Earth it has retrograde motion. 6. King Herod the Great's Jerusalem Palace, near Citadel of David. Citadel of David, Jerusalem, Israel. In 1999, Israeli archaeologist Amit Reem, of the Israeli Antiquities Authority, discovered Herod the Great's palace along the western wall of Jerusalem. This discovery was made while excavations were underway within the former Kishal prison building in Jerusalem. This reinforces the geography of Matthew 2 verse 1, which tells of how the Magi from the east came to see Herod the Great at his palace in Jerusalem. 7. The Herodium and Tomb Monument of King Herod Zatara, Palestinian territories. In 1972, Israeli archaeologist Dr. Ehud Netzer started excavations on the Herodium, an artificial hill built with slave labor. On top was Herod the Great's elaborate palace. In 2007, Netzer discovered Herod the Great's mausoleum and smashed sarcophagus in a tomb monument located partway up the hill. The reconstructed sarcophagus is now located in the Israel Museum, Jerusalem. 8. King Herod the Great's sarcophagus found within the Herodium Israel Museum, Jerusalem, Israel. In 2007, after extensive excavations of the Herodium, the tomb and sarcophagus of King Herod was found halfway up the man-made hill. The sarcophagus was made of well-crafted pink limestone. No bones were found in the tomb and it was heavily smashed, most likely by Jewish patriots who resented the Roman-appointed Herod and fought against Roman rule in the late 60s AD. 9. The birthplace of Jesus Christ Church of the Holy Nativity, Bethlehem, West Bank. The prophet Micah prophesied around 700 BC that the ruler in Israel, who was from everlasting, would come from Bethlehem, the birthplace of King David. In 1934, excavations beneath the sanctuary of the Church of the Holy Nativity in Bethlehem were carried out by W. Harvey, E. T. Richmond, H. Vincent, and R. W. Hamilton. Beautiful mosaics from the time of the Emperor Constantine in the 4th century were found. Empress Helena ordered this church to be built in 339 AD, and this church is the oldest church in the world that is still in use to this day. This verifies that this location has been considered to be the place of birth of Jesus Christ for nearly 17 centuries. Within the Church of the Holy Nativity is the Grotto of the Nativity. This was a cave which was typical of stables of the 1st century. Within the grotto is a 1st century manger and an altar with a silver 14-pointed star that marks the place of the birth of Jesus. The 14 points represent the 14 generations times 3 from Abraham to Jesus in Matthew's Gospel. Pilgrims touch the center of the star and feel the rock of the cave in the place of the birth of the Savior. 10. The bones of Bethlehem's children and adults killed by Herod. Cave of the Innocents beneath Church of the Holy Nativity, Bethlehem, Palestine. In 1962, excavations beneath the monastery of the Church of the Holy Nativity were conducted by Dr. Bellarmino Bagatti, an Italian Franciscan friar and archaeologist. Within the Grotto of the Innocents are many ancient bones, presumably from the 1st century, of people of various ages who had been exhumed in the days of Constantine and his mother Helena and reburied together in this cave. 11. Traditional Cave of the Shepherds near Bethlehem YMCA Shepherds Fields, Beit Saha, Palestine. In 1951, excavations were carried out by archaeologist and Franciscan friar Virgilio Corbo, and traces of human occupation, including ancient oil presses of the 1st century, were found. Tradition from the 4th century names this as the place the angels appeared to the shepherds the night the Lord Jesus was born. The present sanctuary on these grounds was built in 1953. 12. The bed where Jesus slept as a toddler in Egypt, now an altar Al-Muharraq Monastery, Egypt. According to Egyptian Orthodox tradition, the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, came to Egypt and went from place to place for about 3 years. The Al-Muharraq Monastery is in the middle of Egypt and marks the place where the Holy Family stayed for about 6 months. Within the monastery in Chapel of Mary there is an altar which is made of a semicircular piece of marble with an inscription in Greek dating to 746 AD which reads verse O, Lord repose the blessed cult hose. This altar is the oldest Christian altar in the world and the church consecrated by Jesus Christ himself. Tradition states that in the 1st century the child Jesus slept on this marble slab as a bed for half a year. This altar is a fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah 19 verse 19, in that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the middle of the land of Egypt. According to tradition it was also here in this place where the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream telling him to go back to the land of Israel after King Herod's death. 13. Family Home of Jesus in Nazareth Sisters of Nazareth Convent, Nazareth, Israel. The Holy Family returned from Egypt to Nazareth, the town where Jesus spent most of his earthly life. The word Nazareth comes from the Hebrew word for branch, Netzah. In Isaiah 11 verse 1, we read that the Messiah would be from the line of Jesse and be known as a branch, Netzah. Then the prophet Zechariah foretold that the man whose name is the branch will grow up out of his place and build the temple of the Lord. The Messiah was known as Jesus of Nazareth. In 2006, Dr. Ken Dark, a British archaeologist from the University of Reading, discovered a 1st century Jewish dwelling in the grounds of the Sisters of Nazareth Convent. It was a 2-story house with 2 cisterns for water. It was occupied during the 1st century, then abandoned and used as a burial place with a rolling stone tomb. Then in Byzantine and Crusader times it was a place of Christian worship with an altar indicating that it was a place of pilgrimage. It was known as the Church of Nutrition, where Jesus Christ was nourished and raised in Nazareth. 14. The 6th century Madabar map of the Holy Land St. George Greek Orthodox Church, Madabar, Jordan. In 1884, while building the Church of St. George in Madabar, Jordan, builders uncovered a floor mosaic map of the Holy Land. It originally measured 7 by 21 meters and is the oldest original surviving cartographic depiction of the Holy Land, especially Jerusalem. It is dated to the years 542 to 570 AD, and although it has some inaccuracies, it can be helpful by showing the approximate location of the place of baptism of Jesus. 15. The place of the baptism of Jesus Al-Matters, Jordan. In 1998, following the clues from the Madabar map, Franciscan friar Dr. Michel Pixarillo found the actual location of the baptism of Jesus Christ. At the site are the remains of the Byzantine Church of St. John the Baptist with a cross-shaped baptismal font, the only one of its kind in the world. This is remembered as the place where John baptized Jesus, and for centuries during Byzantine times thousands of believers were baptized at this site. After being baptized, pilgrims carved crosses to commemorate their baptism. Crosses can be seen by the hundreds here. Ancient pilgrims such as Theodosius, the Piacenza pilgrim, and Abbot Daniel all wrote about the location. Their descriptions matched this place perfectly. 16. The home of John the Baptist and Elijah's Hill, Almatas, Jordan. John the Baptist came preaching in the wilderness to fulfill Isaiah's prophecy over 700 years beforehand and Malachi's prophecy over 400 years earlier. Then in 1998, after the discovery of the actual baptism site, Dr. Mohammed Wahib, a Jordanian archaeologist, discovered the ruins of a Byzantine-era church and monastery constructed where it was believed that John the Baptist had lived. Jesus came to this place to get away from angry people who wanted to harm him and to be with John the Baptist. At that place many believed in Jesus. Hundreds of monks lived in this area over many centuries, wanting to get close to God and live a life stripped of possessions just as John the Baptist did. 17. The place of Jesus' temptation for 40 days, Mount Quarantania, West Bank. This site is believed to be the place where Jesus fasted 40 days and nights and was tempted by the devil. At this location is the Greek Orthodox monastery of the Temptation. Empress Helena, mother of Constantine, made a pilgrimage to the Cave of the Temptation in 326 AD. The cave became a monastery in the 6th century and it is now staffed by Orthodox monks who lead tours for visitors. 18. The fortress of Machaerus, the place of John the Baptist's execution, Machaerus, Madabar region, Jordan. In 1807 Dr. Ulrich Jasper Seetzen, a German doctor and explorer, discovered the fortress of Machaerus. This is where John the Baptist was imprisoned and beheaded, and although the Gospel does not give a location in Matthew 14 verses 1 to 12, the writings of Flavius Josephus tell us that these events took place here. This is where John the Baptist spent his final days. 19. Cana, where Jesus changed water to wine, wedding church at Cana, Kafar Cana, Galilee, Israel. The Cana Catholic Wedding Church in Kafar Cana, built in 1883, sits on top of ruins of what many believe to be Cana of Galilee in Khirbet Cana. In 1997, excavations by Father Eugenio Aliata, an Italian Franciscan archaeologist, uncovered ruins of houses from the 1st to 4th centuries AD and structures from Byzantine times. An inscription in Aramaic was found which reads verse in memory of the pious Joseph, son of Tanhum, son of Bota, and of his children who made this table, may it be for them a blessing, Amen. A winepress was found at the site as well as large stone jars that could have been preserved as the jars Jesus used to turn water into wine. 20. Alternate location of Cana where Jesus changed water to wine, Netophah Valley, Galilee, Israel. To the north-northwest of the Cana Catholic Wedding Church, which has evidence of a small village from the Hellenistic period, which began in 323 BC, onwards. This village contained a mikveh, used for Jewish ritual bathing, and a structure that resembles a Roman-era synagogue. A cave complex at the southern end shows that it was used as a Christian place of worship with an altar decorated by a Maltese-style cross and 2 stone jars with room for another 4 jars, matching the Gospel description. 21. Synagogue in Nazareth where Jesus preached, Nazareth, Galilee, Israel. The synagogue church is a 12th century church built by the Crusaders. According to tradition, it is built upon the exact site of the 1st century synagogue where Jesus learned, grew up, preached and was rejected by his own fellow Nazarenes. It was in the care of the Franciscans for centuries until the 18th century when the ruler Dahir al-Omar gave it to the Greek Catholics. It is now in the care of the Melchite Catholic Church, which built a modern church next door in 1887. 22. Mount Precipice in Nazareth where Jesus was rejected, Nazareth, Galilee, Israel. The prophet Isaiah foretold the coming Messiah's rejection. He wrote verse: he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Isaiah 53 verse 3. About 2 kilometers to the south of the center of the city of Nazareth is a cliff which rises to an elevation of 395 m. Here is the place where the unbelieving Nazarenes brought Jesus from the synagogue in order to throw him down and kill him. Miraculously, Jesus walked right through the crowd and went on his way to Capernaum. He left Nazareth from the tribe of Zebulun and came to Capernaum in the tribe of Naphtali to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah 23. The place of the call of the first disciples: Capernaum, Galilee, Israel. The prophet Isaiah foretold that the great light would come to Galilee, first the land of Zebulun, where Nazareth is located, then the land of Naphtali, where Capernaum is located. Somewhere along the northern shoreline of the Sea of Galilee near the city of Capernaum is where Jesus fulfilled prophecy and called his disciples in Matthew 4 verses 18 to 22. Here, Peter, Andrew, James and John left their nets and livelihood and followed Jesus. 24 First-century fishing boat discovered and restored: Yuval Allen Museum, Genosar, Galilee, Israel. In 1986, two Israeli fishermen, Moshe and Yuval Ufan, discovered something sticking out of the beach. It was an ancient, well-crafted boat that had been buried in the sand for 2,000 years. It would have been the type of boat that Jesus and his disciples used on the Sea of Galilee. It was carefully restored and is now on display at the Yuval Allen Museum in Genosar, Israel. 25 The place of the feeding of 5,000: Church of the Multiplication, Tabgha, Galilee, Israel. The prophet Micah foretold that the one to be ruler in Israel would stand and feed his flock, and that this one would be great to the ends of the earth. Jesus fulfilled this prophecy when he literally fed thousands with one boy's lunch. In 381 AD, the Spanish pilgrim Lady Egeria described the place where Jesus placed the loaves and fishes on a rock, which is now an altar. In that place he multiplied the loaves and fish to feed 5,000 men plus women and children. A Benedictine Catholic church called the Church of the Multiplication was built around the site in 1982. The building next to this beautiful church was burned down in 2015 by radical Israeli youths who were arrested and indicted on charges of arson. However, the main part of the church, and especially the altar, was unharmed by the fire. 26 Synagogue where Jesus attended in Capernaum. Synagogue in Capernaum, Galilee, Israel. In 1866, British cartographer Captain Charles W. Wilson discovered this ancient late 4th century synagogue in Capernaum. The upper level of white limestone was then partially restored as it stands today. However, it stands on an older 1st century synagogue made of black basalt. This lower synagogue was the one where Jesus cast out a demon and gave his sermon on him being the bread of life. John 6 verses 25 to 59. 27 Peter's house in Capernaum where Jesus lived. Capernaum, Galilee, Israel. In 1921, Italian archaeologist and Franciscan friar Gaudenzio Orfali discovered the octagonal remains of a Byzantine basilica in Capernaum. Orfali was tragically killed in a car accident in 1926 and further excavations were put on hold. Later, in 1968, Italian archaeologist and Franciscan friar Virgilio Corbo, along with other friars, excavated further under the center of the octagonal church. They discovered that it was built around a 1st century home which had been venerated from the time of Christ through to the Arab period. It is almost certain that this is the home of Peter, his wife and mother-in-law, and the home where Jesus also lived. Over top of the 1st century home a large memorial sanctuary was erected in 1990. and Friar Corbo received his final wish to be buried next to the long-venerated room of St. Peter in 1991. 28. The Mount of the Beatitudes, where Jesus preached, near Capernaum, Galilee, Israel. In the year 381 AD, the Spanish pilgrim Lady Egeria spoke of a cave in the hillside at the Seven Springs, near Tabgha, upon which the Lord ascended when he taught the Beatitudes. The terrace above this still existing cave, called Mafera Ayub, is considered the traditional place where Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5-7. A Byzantine church was erected nearby in the 4th century, but is now in ruins. Uphill from this structure is the Church of the Beatitudes, built in 1938 by the Italian Franciscans. 29. The city of Nain, where Jesus raised a man from the dead, Nain, Galilee, Israel. In 1838, the famous Edward Robinson, known as the father of biblical geography, identified the city of Nain on his travels to Palestine. This is the city where Jesus raised the widow's son from death. To commemorate the miracle of Luke 7 verses 11-17, the Franciscan order built a church here in 1880. 30. Bethsaida, hometown of Peter, where blind man healed, northeast of Sea of Galilee, Israel. In 1987, Dr. Rami Aref, an Israeli archaeologist, began excavations of the ancient Bethsaida. He uncovered ruins from the time of King David, when it was the capital of the kingdom of Jeshua. This city was destroyed, and by the time of Jesus it was a Jewish fishing village. Peter, Andrew and Philip all came from Bethsaida. In this place, Jesus laid hands on a blind man who saw men like trees walking and who was then completely healed.